You're listening to the No Gray Areas podcast with Patrick McCullough. Today's guest is Chris Wineland, author and comedian. Chris talks about being an influential entertainer, having ambition, and handling hecklers. Let's dive in.
Chris Wineland, welcome to No Gray Areas podcast. So good to have you. You and I worked together for a very short time at a local church here in Greater Phoenix for a short time. That's how we got to know each other.
Correct.
Today, we're going to talk about Christianity and Hollywood and history. I mean, I'm a history geek. And so when you were telling me you like talking about the history of that, I was geeking out already on that. So I'm excited about that. First, let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us your background, right?
Yeah. So first off, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
I got a haircut just for this podcast. I did.
What?
I did.
No
It's
one
true.
can see you.
I know. It doesn't matter. That's how excited I was.
Yeah, we have 20 people that watch the YouTube
Okay.
one, and then the many that
Right.
listen.
Well,
so
that's
I'm
good.
glad you got the haircut.
The 20 people are going to be so appreciative.
They are.
They're going to be like, did he get a haircut just for this?
Yeah.
And it's true. I did because I hate haircuts.
Yeah.
And I got it just in case for your 20 people.
Yes.
So
Why do you hate haircuts?
I do. I hate haircuts.
Why?
Can't stand it. Because people want to do small talk and then they're cutting your hair and they're like, what do you do? And
Yeah.
because I'm a comedian, it's a very awkward question to answer.
Yes.
Because the moment you say, I'm a comedian, they want a joke.
They want a stand-up routine while you're
A
sitting.
stand-up
there getting
routine
your
while you're
haircut.
sitting. Yeah. I'm like, no, keep doing your job.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
isn't an
Yeah,
audience of
yeah.
one. It's very awkward.
Yeah.
No comedian is getting up on stage and getting their hair cut while they tell a joke. It doesn't work.
It's true.
It doesn't
true.
work.
It's true.
So, what would your question?
Do you know, this is going to be the whole podcast.
I know.
today.
This is
We're
the
gonna
whole
be like, Wait,
podcast.
what were you going to say? And you just asked me what was my question. I don't have a clue what my question is.
Oh, okay.
But almost every comedian that I know is
Yeah.
actually a really deep thinker too. Like
Yeah.
you get to know them, and you're the same way. I found out you're the same way. That you get to know you a little bit, and you just think like, oh, these guys are always funny, and they're
Yeah.
always being. But you sit down and start
We're
talking
not.
to them, and they're like, yeah. I've asked your wife, is he always funny? She's like, he's really hardly ever funny.
It's true. It's actually true. We're very boring people.
Yeah.
Comedians are so boring. I remember a few years in, I went to this big party of comedians.
Yeah.
And it was like after a show, and so all these comics were there. And it was some pretty big names, and there were these the non-comics that were there, like these fans or whatever. There were these couple of girls that were hanging out with all of us comics, and we're just sitting around, and it is like that intellectual thinking.
Yeah.
We were just like, well, did you know that bees really are not supposed to fly with their wings? Like, we're just saying all this random stuff. And the one girl speaks up after an hour of hearing this, and she goes, so you guys aren't really funny, are you? And we all were like, no, we're not.
no.
It's a skill. It's
Yeah.
not like we're constantly funny, because we're really not. We're much deep thinkers. I think the most boring lunches I've ever had are with fellow comedians.
Yeah.
And they're just boring. We're
Yeah.
just sitting there eating, tacos or whatever.
Well, when I say intellectual, I've enjoyed my conversations
Yeah.
with the comics, including you, that
Yeah.
I've gotten to know. It's just that you think you're going to be sitting there getting nonstop jokes.
You
It's
think,
not that
yeah.
way. All of a sudden,
Never.
it's like we're having deep conversations, like
Yeah.
good conversations. But when you just called it a skill, I think I love that you use that word, because it's a skill. I mean, I'm a public speaker. I'm on the
Right.
stage. I can't imagine doing stand-up comedy.
Yeah, it is a skill.
Why would you choose that?
I think it's the coolest thing. Honestly, I think it's the coolest, most rock star thing you can do.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a band where you're working together, 5 or 6 people, and then you're playing. It's like one individual person standing in front of 200, 400 people, and you're telling them, you laugh when I tell you to laugh. Like that's ridiculous. That's rebellious. That's just crazy to me. And I didn't want to do it. So I started comedy when I was 18. I'm 31 now.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to tell you my age, right?
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah. With your haircut, I thought you were like 24.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. See,
yeah.
that's why I did it. No, I started when I was 18, and it's actually because my mom forced me to get up on stage and do comedy. So,
Your mom forced you to be. So you're a
Yes.
comedian today because mom made
Because
you.
because mom made me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually parents want you to be a dentist or
Yeah,
a lawyer.
yeah.
Not my mom. My mom was like, you're going to be a comedian. Literally. I don't know why. She always thought it was funny or something.
Yeah.
And so she told me, when you're 18, you got to go to a comedy club. So on my 18th birthday, she took me to a comedy club, and we found out they did an open mic the next day. So I went home and I just wrote material. And the next day, I got up on stage, and somebody other than my mom laughed, and I was mind
were
blown.
hooked.
I was like, that wasn't even my mom. I was hooked.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
hooked. I did 200 shows the first year, just totally hooked, and it was all free. Like,
Did your mom laugh in that first comedy show?
she did. She loved.
So
Yeah,
you had 2
she's
people laughing with you.
2 people at least, I think.
Yes.
My mom's always been so supportive of my comedy. So the whole reason that I've been doing comedy for 14 years now is because my mom told me to get up on stage. I never thought I would really like it.
Yeah.
And I was just obsessed
How
with
cool
it.
is that? Because like you're saying, we were kind of joking about it, but a lot of times moms are like, come on, a comedian, but your mom actually saw that skill, that talent, and is like, go for it.
My parents both are dreamers, and they both have always seen that, like, I'm a pretty ambitious kid.
Yeah.
So they've always done a good job. Both parents have done a great job of, like, helping me. But
Yeah.
my mom has always been like, whatever the weirdest thing is, you should probably do it. I don't know why. She's always been for that. So, I just did it. I loved it. And the first year, like I said, I was doing 200 shows, but it was in Ohio, Northeast Ohio, and there were not a lot of clubs.
Wait. Let me pause for a second.
Yes.
I might have missed that. Your first year, you did 200 shows?
I did 200 shows. Yeah.
So you're 18.
All
you
free.
find out there's an open mic the next day. You go home, you write some material, you get a couple laughs, mom and someone else. You're hooked, and then you end up doing 200 shows.
I did 200 shows that year, my first year. But it was all free.
What?
It was all free.
Yeah.
Because I would go to, like, open mics, and then when there weren't open mics, I would go to Taco Bell's. Literally, no lie. I'd go to Taco Bell's because at 10 p.m., anybody is, they're not just eating because they're hungry, okay, right? So I would just walk up and be like, hey, I'm a comedian. Can I tell you a joke? And they would just be like, okay. And, just in the middle of eating their chalupa, and I would just start telling jokes. And so next thing you know...
That's a pretty good place to test jokes, right?
It really is,
because someone in Taco Bell eating a chalupa at 10 o'clock is they're either going to tell you the truth or they're going to laugh.
Exactly. Or they're just going to laugh because they're already laughing for a million different reasons.
Yeah.
So I started just doing, comedy. People would, like, just kind of in the Taco Bell, they'd get there. And if I would walk by bars and I hear that there's a speaker, I would go up to the band and I'd say, when you're taking a break, can I do comedy? Like, literally, I would do anything. I would do birthday parties. I would do all of it my first year. I did 200 shows my first year, just all free, whatever I could find.
Chris, that's a lot of ambition.
Thanks. Well, yeah.
Seriously.
I've been told I'm slightly ambitious.
Yeah.
I've heard it. But then it paid off because my second year...
So you're 18, 19 at the time then?
Yeah, I was 18.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a rule, okay? If you ever want to do comedy, the rule is...
I don't, but go ahead and tell me the
rule.
rule.
If you ever did, I'm helping you out. The rule is don't charge your first year because you're not going to do good, okay? Don't charge your first year, no matter what. And right at the end of my 1-year anniversary, I decided to disregard that rule, and I charged the church that wanted me to do 30 minutes. Yeah. And I am telling you, sir, I bombed. It was the worst. It was so bad that at the end, I walked up to the guy that was going to hand me the check, and I said, I don't deserve money. And then he looked directly in my eyes and said, I already wrote the check. And he just, like, he agreed
So
that I was bad.
He didn't argue.
No.
He was like, no, go ahead and take it. He's like,
it was bad. And it was like it was right before my year 2 when I was going to start the charge. Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible.
So why do you think that is? Like, were you having pretty good success that first year when you did all these free shows?
Yeah, but when it's free and when you charge, it's just two different worlds. Because when it's free, it's like, yeah, okay, if you make me laugh, that's great. We're all here together. If it's charged, it's like, well, you better be worth the money. Yeah. That I'm putting up, especially for churches usually. Yeah. And so it was just this, like, small church, and if the pastor didn't laugh, the congregation didn't laugh, and that was my first experience with that.
They were looking at the pastor to see if they should laugh at this.
Correct. And the pastor only laughed one time. One time in 30 minutes. It wasn't good.
When you made fun of elders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then you could see them all go, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, you're all, whatever.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, were those new jokes that you were doing that night, or was it?
Well, that's the thing.
Or was it a lot with the whole pay thing?
Yeah, so that's the thing. When you start off with a year, you really don't have a lot of good material. So I had 30 minutes, but none of it was good. Like, I would say out of the 30 minutes in a year, 5 minutes was good.
Okay.
I didn't really learn to be a good writer until my second year. I was opening up for the head writer of Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, and I think the 200 shows paid off because I opened up for the whole weekend, and at the end he said, hey, would you ever want to write for Late Night with Jimmy Fallon? And I said, yeah, absolutely.
Because he saw you had some pretty good material.
Yeah, he liked my material.
Yeah.
So I said, well, yeah, absolutely. And so I ended up becoming a monologue writer, and that really helped because I would write about 100 jokes a night.
100 jokes a night?
Yeah.
For a monologue?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they send you like information. They send you like all these subjects,
Yeah.
all these like top news
Like
headlines,
current events.
current
and-
events, stuff like that. And so I took it seriously, again, a little ambitious. And I was like, okay, I'm 19 years old. I can just stay up all night, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to stop me?
Yeah.
So I stayed up all night and I wrote 100 jokes, and then 10 a.m., 10 jokes are due. But I wrote 100.
Would you pick the best out of the 100, or would
I
you just
would.
give them the 100?
No, because you're only supposed to send in 10.
Okay.
So I would look at the 100, and then I would send my best 10. And then for the first few months, it was like terrible. Like I don't even want to go back and look at those jokes. But then after a while, I started to get it, because I would watch the show every night and be like, okay, I get it. This is how I get better. This is how I do better and stuff. So yeah, it just really kind of paid off. And then I remember there was a comic that came up to me mid through my second year, and he said, you used to be not funny at all, and now you're hilarious. I remember he said that, and I was like, all right, all this writing is paying off.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Then you could go start getting checks from churches.
Right. Yes. Then I did. I started to get paid quite a bit from churches and clubs and stuff about mid-year too.
Yeah. You know what I love about that story though is I one of the things that's just a pet peeve of mine is how for some reason in our Western culture we always try to display this overnight success.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing.
No.
In any field, there's no such thing. So what you're describing is, at 18, you get your mom and someone else to laugh. You do a bunch of free stuff for a year. You're doing a lot of work then. You're doing a lot of work. Then you get Jimmy Fallon, you're writing for a show, but you're still doing a lot of work. You're just grinding,
still
grinding,
learning.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to have such a national opportunity like that, but it doesn't mean that you're perfect yet, You have to like keep working on the skill, so to speak. And to be honest, it's great when somebody else thinks that you're funny, but you have to like learn to be really funny. Again, it doesn't mean that you're funny naturally. Like some of the most boring people are the funniest people. They just have to like work on
Why
it.
is that? What do you mean by that? Like,
well, like so they say Jerry.
Are you saying I could be funny? Appreciate your honesty. This is no gray areas.
If anybody's hearing in the audio, they just heard me do a high pitch. No, of course you could. Of course you could.
Yeah. No gray areas. You're not supposed to lie.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your honesty.
I have an unpopular opinion. A lot of comedians believe comedy can't be taught. So that's a huge belief in the comedy community.
Like you're born with it, or
either you can do it or you can't. They don't believe. A lot of comedians don't believe in teaching comedy. Like there's like comedy classes. A lot of stand-ups will say like, don't go to them because you can't be taught comedy. I disagree. Not just because I run a comedy class. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. But that'd be funny. If you want to pay, go on to chriswineland.com. $500 a night.
I was going to say 200. So you
there
bumped
you
it
go.
right.
I bumped it up. Yeah. You gotta make money somehow. No, but I feel like if you work really hard, if you learn it, you could do it. But you really have to apply yourself. Like you have to look at comedy as not just a natural born thing, but like how do you make people laugh? Kind of how do you control the room?
And if we started listing the comedians that are like,
socially
nationally
awkward? Okay, because that's all of them.
Yeah, probably.
No, it is.
Right?
Like Jerry Seinfeld is known to be socially awkward.
Yeah.
People, when they meet him, they just think he's rude. But he's not. He's just all up in his head.
Yeah.
He's Jerry Seinfeld,
Yeah.
So most comics are like that.
But I think, too, if we started listing like the Jerry Seinfelds and the Robin Williams and all these people that international, we'd probably find they all grind. They all, right? They're none of them just walk out and have their stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like they're working, not only in the past, but still.
Yeah. Well, and, in my book, The Great Hackle, which I had written and published, is there's a story, because I tell a lot of stories of these comics, and there's a story about Jerry Seinfeld. We're going to come back and talk about the book, but keep going. Yeah. Sorry. So there's a story about Jerry Seinfeld before he got famous, and he got heckled by a guy who threw a glass at him.
Yeah.
Like the guy was they were in a bar, the guy was drunk, he wasn't paying attention, and he just started like booing Jerry Seinfeld, who's a legend now, right? But at the time he wasn't, he was just grinding. And so this guy like threw the glass, and Jerry Seinfeld went off at this guy. Then the club owner came up and was like, you have to get out of here. And Jerry's like, why do I have to get out of here? This guy threw a glass at me. He's like, you just have to trust me, get out of here. Turns out he was a hitman for a mafia at the time. And
so we almost didn't know who Jerry Seinfeld was.
We almost did not know. No, because a different comedian a night later got his arm broken by this hitman. Literally, that's how intense it was. Like,
so you have a dangerous job.
Yeah, sometimes I might. I'm a hero. I don't know if I would use the term hero so much. Thanks for using it for me.
I think you are a hero. Wow. So yeah, you deal with a lot of that. That's why I'm like, I can't believe anybody would choose that. And again, I speak on public stages. I mean, I get the whole thing, prepping, putting something together, trying to grab their attention. But you're like you're up there all alone. You're not just storytelling. It's just people are expecting to laugh. Like even as a speaker, you might tell a story that's funny, and if people laugh, it's fine.
Right.
But if they don't, it's an illustration.
Exactly.
But in your world,
you have to.
They have to laugh.
Yeah, and after a while, it just becomes pretty comfortable. Like, you know what jokes will get people to laugh or what type of culture it is. Like, I always like to sit by the audience a few minutes before to get up on stage just to get to feel them. Are they one-liner type of audiences? Are they observational? Do they just want to sit and hear stories? And it sounds crazy, but you can learn all that just by talking to one audience member.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Now,
absolutely.
that's probably something you had to learn as well.
Yes,
right?
it's
Like
taken
had
me,
to-
a decade to learn that.
Yeah.
And-
So tell us a little bit about the book, The Great Heckle.
So
I'm for the people that watch. I'm holding the
The
book
20
up.
people
you can
that see
not
my
only
haircut?
see Chris's really cool haircut,
Yeah,
but
thanks.
the book that I'm holding up here, The Great Heckle, which we're going to actually, you gave us a few copies to give
Yes.
away to our audience, so we will do that. Tell us a little bit about The Great Heckle.
So I wrote this book a couple years ago based on necessity, and it was my heart for comedians to get the gospel out to them because I was featuring it and I was headlining at a lot of clubs. And so I was doing a lot of churches. That was kind of the height of it, where I was just performing at all these churches.
Yeah.
But then I kept doing a lot of clubs. And the one thing I learned is, so when you're featuring or headlining at a comedy club, you are with the other 2 or 1 comedian for the whole weekend. Because there's about 6 shows that you'll do, 5 to 6 shows that you'll do at a comedy club for the whole weekend. And you get paid a little bit for it and everything. But you hang out with these comics, and you hang out with the same comics all weekend. And so I started ministering the gospel to them because that's my heart. My heart is that entertainers are the most influential people in the entire world, and yet nobody's reaching out to them for the gospel. And it hit me one day.
Say that again.
So entertainers are the most influential people in the entire world.
Yep, and I think most of us would agree with that.
Yes,
Yep.
and if anybody wants to argue it, I would love to argue with you.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many different, the Kardashians put out one episode and millions of people are watching, right?
Yep.
And they'll do anything that they say.
Yeah.
You look at social media, same thing. If somebody's plugging a product and they have 200 million followers, everybody's going to want that product.
We ask entertainers their opinions on politics.
Right.
You're like, why? They're famous in the movie. Why would we?
Right.
But they're influential. They have
right.
That. Okay, so keep going. So
yes.
they're the most
influential people in the entire world, and nobody is reaching out to them for the gospel. And obviously, that's a big nobody. There are a couple of organizations going out there, but it's so unreached. I mean, there's millions, and most of them have a hatred towards God, a misunderstanding towards God. They're atheists, they're agnostic, or they left the church.
They've been mistreated or had a bad experience.
Right.
Yep.
And nobody looks at them as people. Because they're in front of millions of people, everybody looks at them as like Hollywood unreachables or like lowercase gods. And they're not.
Yeah.
They're human beings that are away from the grace of Jesus Christ and desperately, desperately need it. Yeah. And yet nobody's even trying.
Yeah.
And so that hit me a few years ago when I was doing comedy and I'm hanging out with these people and I'm hearing such like bitterness and anger and, their marriages are falling apart and all this stuff. And so I made it my mission field, if you will, to say, how can I reach them for the gospel? So every time I would do like a weekend with the same comics, I would be with them everywhere. I'd say, hey, before we do a show the next day, you want to go to breakfast together, you want to do lunch together, and I would just be in their face as much as possible. And then I would wait for the opportunity for them to ask me anything about Jesus or God. And then it's like, that was it. And so I would minister the gospel to these guys. I'd pray for them before their show. I would do everything I could. And at the end, I realized there was a missed opportunity where they didn't have any resources. I mean, I'd give them a Bible, but they didn't have any resources to help explain the gospel in their language. And it kind of hit me when I was reading the book of Acts, where Paul is at Athens and he talks about the unknown God, right? He uses their language and their understanding and their culture to minister the gospel. And so that's essentially what this book is.
He wrote to the Corinthians when he said, be all things to all people. He's like, Yeah,
exactly. Be all things to all people.
Yep.
So I wrote this book called The Great Hackle, and it's a short book on purpose so that a comedian could just read it on the plane or, just kind of in a couple of evenings. And it preaches the gospel, and it talks about, let's imagine that Jesus is the greatest entertainer to ever live. Now, not in the sense where he's like fake or anything like that, because a lot of entertainers could be considered fake. No, what if he was the most artistic, most creative human being to ever live? Because he was. Now let's
Which
say
entertainers are creative and
Yep.
right. Yep, that's
and most entertainers, they actually want to speak truth. They want to pursue truth,
yeah.
and they want to speak it out. Well, Jesus was the most truthful that ever lived.
yeah.
Well, and then also he was the most heckled in the entire universe. And so that's why it's called the Great Hackle, because comedians, we know what heckling is, right?
Oh,
We've
Chris,
been heckled before.
That's so good. And anybody, I mean, the higher, the more popular you get, if you're just on the YouTube, whatever, if you've got a few likes, but if you get 1,000 likes, guarantee you're going to have some heckling in there too.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
But so you're helping these people understand this historical figure named Jesus was maybe the greatest entertainer of all times and was heckled more than anyone else.
Heckled more than anyone else.
Probably put in a way that they've never heard.
Exactly. And I'll tell you something really cool. So we started partnering. I just published this 2 years ago, and I did it because I felt like the Lord told me to. And again, I just did it because there was no resources.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do with it. So far, this is amazing. I partnered with 2 comedy clubs in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And what we do is when the headliner comes in, there's these gift baskets that I make. And the gift baskets have the book in it. And it preaches the gospel to them. So I got an email. At the end of the book, it says, email me if you read this book. Just send me an email so I know that you got it. And there was a comedian who was a dirty comic. I met her for 2 minutes. I was headlining this show, and she was opening, and I just gave her the book. I said, hey, here you go. This is for you. She read it in a night, and she emailed me, and she said, I used to go to church when I was a kid, and I've just walked away from the Lord. And this has helped me to understand Jesus in a way I never did. And that to me is like, that is headway, that is like pushing the gospel to the entertainers. And so, so that's the whole reason I wrote this book.
Yeah.
It's just to like get it out there.
Yeah.
And stop looking at people like they're untouchable, but like they desperately need Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Love your heart with that too. I mean, when you go back and you talk about the Acts, the passage in Acts where Paul is saying that, and in Corinthians where he's saying be all things, all people. I think a lot of times someone who's grown up in the church or people that are from a faith-based perspective are going, well, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Like, how do I do that in my field? I love that you figured out a way.
Yeah.
And I've actually never thought about it from that perspective before, that he was the greatest entertainer and more heckled.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are 2,000 years after he walked on this earth, and he's still
being heckled.
Influencing people and still being heckled.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and that's actually how the book starts, because the book says, you as a comedian, you've been heckled before. And the worst part of being heckled is that nobody's listening to you, right? You got up on stage and you only had a few seconds to speak before somebody yells, boo, just because they want to. And so the whole idea of the premise of the book is to say, don't heckle Jesus. You've been heckled before? Read this one book, and then if you're not satisfied, if you're upset at Jesus for whatever reason, send me an email. Yell at me, right? And then we'll talk. But most of the times when a comedian takes me up on this challenge, they don't know what to do with this. They read it and they go, well, wait a second. Like, if Jesus is true and the words that you're putting in here are true, then what does that mean for me? What do I do?
Yeah.
And that is one of the coolest situations that any person can be in, because they have to make a decision.
You used the phrase too. You talked about purpose, which is a perfect segue into like the No Gray Areas podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, what we talk about here is, how do we live on purpose for a purpose? How do we make good choices?
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason you wrote this too, is just to help people find purpose, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I'm such an ambitious person. Yeah. So for the longest time, I overcomplicated what purpose was. And then I read the 2 greatest commandments that Jesus says, right, is the love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. If an entertainer could understand that, then they would understand their purpose. And there's so many times where entertainers misuse what they think their purpose is. They think it's to get as famous as possible, any means necessary. And that's not it at all. In fact, Jesus gives us, if we're loving God and we're loving our neighbor, then we're supposed to die to ourselves a little bit. And I'll tell you one of the things, I had to check my heart on this. So I was a comedian. I was like 6 years in. I was doing okay in Cleveland, Ohio. I was like starting to kind of work my way up there. There was a guy I took under my wing, and he didn't really start doing comedy. I got him in to start doing comedy. Well, before I knew it, he was moving up in the ladder way quicker than me. And I couldn't figure out why. And I went to a mic with him. And you know what this guy did? This is mind-blowing. He, after every comic would get off stage, he would walk up to him, no matter who they are, even if he's never met him, and he'd say, great job, can I get you anything? And they would be like, I guess, yeah, I'd love a drink. He's like, great, I'm getting you a drink. And go get him a drink. Well, before you know it, this kid was getting all the gigs, because everybody was like, this guy cares about me. He's like doing everything for me. And I remember, and he wasn't a Christian, and I remembered sitting there and
But
I was
he
like,
was living out the words of Jesus.
he was, without realizing
yeah.
it. And I was sitting there and I was like, I have been doing this all wrong. I need to be serving these guys, not so I can move forward,
Yeah.
but because I need to care. I do care about them. Why am I not doing this? Why is somebody showing me up?
Yeah.
And the moment I realized that, I was like, yeah, imagine if entertainers like myself would just take that full on and say, hey, great show. How can I take care of you?
Yeah.
Do you want a drink? You want anything? It's on me, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And it's like just thinking about that would absolutely change somebody's perspective. They'd want to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're about to start a podcast. We're going to get into that moment. But let me, before we jump into that, what was the worst experience you've had as a comedian, and then the best?
Yeah, the worst experience I think I've had as a comedian, man. Yeah, okay, I know what it is. So this was a few years into comedy. This is maybe 4 years in, right? And you're just doing all the mics you can get. And so there was this one gig. I think I got paid $20 for it, nothing big. And it was at this bar. And there was supposed to be an audience, but for whatever reason, there was no audience. There were two people in the audience.
And your mom wasn't one of them?
And my mom was not one of them.
Yeah.
No, they were these two ladies. They didn't even know each other. They were sitting across the way, so it's even awkward. It's this big bar area.
Yeah.
There's one person in the middle and one person on the side. Well, apparently the comedian before me offended one of the ladies, so she got up and left. It was my turn. Now I only had one person in the whole audience. How do you entertain an audience of one person?
Do you still look around the room like it's full?
I
of
did.
people?
I didn't know what to do. I walked up and I was like, so where's my audience from? It was one person. She didn't get the joke and she just left. I was like, that was just me. It was me. So that was the worst show, I think.
Yeah. With no audience.
With no audience.
Although if you would have just gone through your routine, you probably would have thought you were hilarious.
Yeah, I pretty much did at the end. I just started practicing.
Did you just quit? Did you? I know everyone's wondering right now.
No, I did the full 30 minutes.
You did the full 30 minutes?
Absolutely. Full commitment.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's
it's
there.
all in. Okay.
Well, yeah, because you're able to try new material, practice new, or just work on the same one and try to
get the timing and all that.
There's always an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't miss the opportunity. A lot of people, I remember there were so many people that would say I'm better than this. I remember, people would do that. Then they would leave. Well, those people are not doing comedy anymore.
Yeah.
Me and when I started Youngstown, Ohio, 2008, me and another guy are the only ones still doing comedy. There were 20 of us. Now it's me and this other guy that are only doing comedy. And we call each other once a month. He's in New York City. I'm here in Phoenix. We'll call each other once a month, and all we do is hype each other up.
Yeah.
We just say, you're still doing it. Keep going. Keep going.
Keep doing
That's
it. Yeah.
Because everybody else quit.
Yeah.
And I only had one time in my entire career where I woke up and I thought I was going to quit. And I remembered thinking, well, you know what? Just by me going means I'm winning. Everybody else, they just give up. So it's suddenly the race becomes easier and easier just because you're the only one still running it.
It reminds me of Joe Gagliano, who wrote the book No Gray Areas, this podcast after. He always says if it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
Yes.
And that's what you're seeing.
Yes.
It goes back to the grind. It's
It
not, when you see the comedian up there with the packed house and having a great time and everybody's laughing and everything, that person at some point had a story like yours.
Absolutely, yeah.
Guaranteed.
And that kind of answers your other question, what was the best show? And I remember the best show for me was I was doing a Joshua Fest in California. It was 6,000 people, and I was opening up I had somehow they had given me the main spot. Because they had told me, they were like, we've had Christian comedians here before, but you're just a different Christian comic. And there is, because I don't do the churchy material, because I didn't grow up in church.
Yeah.
So I just do funny material.
Yeah.
And some of it can be a little edgy. I grew up with divorced parents, so I say that at churches, and people love it.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, we want to give you the prime spot. So it was Sunday night, and it was right after Red and right before Skillet. And I got up. And what was crazy was I brought a friend to sell my shirts, and he did such a good job. They sold all 200 shirts before I had ever performed. And so now everybody's wearing my shirts.
Yeah.
And I'm staring out they don't even know if I'm funny yet.
And you're looking at 200 people with your shirts on.
Yeah, and somehow they started, I think it was my friend, they started chanting my name. I'm like, you know nothing about me.
Yeah.
But, I think it was just because I was right there at the height of it, like between the two like best acts of the show. And I just, to be honest, like I killed. And I know that doesn't sound humble,
Yeah.
but I did. It was one of the best shows.
Anybody.
6,000 people,
Yeah.
outside. And
Anybody in any field,
Yes.
when you hit it. Like
Yes.
you just
You
hit a
know.
home run on that one.
Yeah,
right?
you just know. And one of the coolest parts of it was a few acts before was Reliant K. And when I lived in Ohio, my sister and I would love to listen to Reliant K. And I would say, one day, like, I'm going to get out of Ohio. Like, it's one of those funny stories. I'm going to get out of Ohio and I'm going to tour. And there I am with Reliant K, the band I used to listen to. And so it was just such a cool experience for me.
Like, when was that? What year?
That was...
Like, how long have you been grinding at this?
Yeah, I think I was 8 years in. I was
Okay.
8 years in when that happened.
Yep.
And then since then, there was just so many breakthroughs of doing big shows regularly. But I remember that night, people thought I was like this big rock star. And I was like, are you kidding me? This is like the first time I've ever performed in front of 6,000 people.
Yeah.
I'm expecting half these people to leave. It's like you're just used to the grind. You're used to like, and oddly enough, I think that's why the gospel is going to be so like, it's going to make a lot of sense with entertainers. Because entertainers know if you're going to go down this path, it is hard. Like, expect to sleep in your car a few nights. Expect to like not have food sometimes. Expect to like eat ramen for a year. And
Sounds
Jesus,
a little bit like what Jesus said to us, right?
Where he says, "Hey, there's no place to lay your head."
Yep.
And I that's why I
Take
say,
up your cross and follow me. Like, this isn't going to be easy.
Right. And that's why, honestly, I feel like I've had conversations with comedians where they're like, well, church doesn't really make sense to me. And I'm just like, well, that's because maybe they didn't tell you the cost. If they told you the cost, you would want to do it because comedians love the cost. Like entertainers, we're all out for the cost. The whole reason, like, I got laughs, but it was that night, that first night of doing comedy, that headliner was like, hey, if you want to be a comedian, expect to have nothing good for you for like 5 years. And the moment he said that, something about me was like, that's what I want. I want to sleep in my car. Like, I want to do something really hard. And I think entertainers, if they hear that for the gospel, like, it's about dying to self. It's a challenge that they're like, that's amazing.
Chris, this is so cool because I never put these things together. Like, I've never seen how that connects. And I love how you've connected those dots and then wrote a book on it.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it is so true. I'll bet that night where you had 200 people wearing your shirts in the audience, 6,000 people, and they're all laughing. Part of what that made that so special too is you'd been grinding for 8 years. I mean, you had some wins, you'd had some losses. You had an
So
audience
many.
of 2 where one leaves as you get up because the other one offends them.
Yeah.
And then that made it special in some ways.
So
right?
special, yeah. The wins you learn to just appreciate 10 times more because it could become a loss at any time, It's like I remember
next night.
Yeah, well, in 2020, the height of 2020, I was a sidekick on a radio show that had 5 million listeners. It was the number one weekend radio show in the world.
Yeah.
And I was loving it. It was a job I was supposed to have for the next 10, 15 years. And they loved me, and it was like such a big deal. And I remembered like it was right down the street from my house, the studio was. So I would wake up every morning and I would be like, babe, I've made it. Literally, like I would say these words, right? I've made it. Get in my car and go. As you know, in 2020, a thing called COVID hit. And I lost my dream job in a day. Everybody got fired, everybody, because nobody knew what was happening.
Yeah.
And so I remembered I was like, man, this is what I thought I was working so hard for, was that job. And I lost it in a second. And I remember having a conversation with this sweet old lady at my church that said, well, I bet you're just appreciative that you had the time with it. And I was like, wow, I never thought of that. You usually just look at the loss as being like the worst part. But what if you're just appreciative of the time that you had? And then who knows what could happen, coming up. And it just changed my whole perspective.
There's the wisdom of someone who'd lived a few decades.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It came from a sweet old lady. I was like, all right.
Yeah. So you have this new podcast coming out called Forgotten Hollywood, right?
Yes.
And
I'm so excited about this.
Yeah. When's that coming out?
So it's going to come out in March. Everywhere you can listen to a podcast. Okay. And it's slightly different than, it's a history podcast. Have you ever listened to history podcasts?
No, but because I'm a history geek, I need to start finding
you need to.
them.
Just type.
I love history.
In March, type in Forgotten Hollywood, subscribe. Okay. You're going to love it.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying it because I wrote it.
Yeah.
But it's a really good show.
We already established that you're my hero.
Yeah. Oh, okay, good. You guys heard that, right? Okay, great. Yeah, so it's a history podcast, which basically means like there's no real interviews. You're telling a story that really happened. And there's all these facts. And for me, like, I wanted to make sure I have a friend that works for me, and his main job right now is to get all of
Just
the
to get the
facts
stories.
right. Just get the story straight. Like, I'll tell him, I remember reading this in a book, and I remember reading this. I need you to go find those books, find those, highlight it, make sure that I'm right. And then I tell his stories. And so there's just...
Let me give you a plug right here. I'm going to give a plug for you right
yeah.
now. I mean, if you're a teacher, if you're a coach, if you're a speaker, if you're a writer, if you do anything like that, sounds like you need to listen to this, because you're always, right? Anybody who's doing that is always trying to come up with illustrations or stories.
Yeah.
So
wow, I like this. I never thought of that.
We just listen to you, and we're getting material for
That's
that.
right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
I'm plugging you.
You're
my hero now.
Wow, thanks. Yeah. This is the best interview I've ever been to.
Thank you. I'm your hero.
Yeah.
So
you're my hero now.
How does someone find you first?
So anybody can find me on my website, chriswineland.com, or on Instagram. I'm on every day at Chris Wineland Comedy, and I do a lot of this Forgotten Hollywood stuff on my Instagram, usually on my stories. And the whole idea is that there's so much of Hollywood history that you do not know.
Yeah.
And most of it is like Christian history that nobody knew. For instance, Hollywood started off as a Christian town. Did you know that?
No.
No, a lot of people didn't. It started off as a Christian town, Hollywood. And in fact, they didn't want movies. They didn't want alcohol. They didn't want gambling. And it was just this little town outside of LA. And when there was a drought, they had to combine with Los Angeles. And the moment they did that, movies came in. But originally, it was a prayed over. All these churches were there, like just a prayed over piece of land that became a community of diehard Christians.
So where Hollywood sits today was originally a piece of land that people prayed over.
Yeah.
And launched a bunch of churches, and that's where Hollywood sits today.
That's where Hollywood sits today. Wow. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah, and that's actually the first episode of Forgotten Hollywood. We have 10 episodes for this first season. It's all going to launch in March. We've been doing kind of batch recording, so I'm just a bit of like a perfectionist, if you will, in that.
Yeah.
So we've been recording. I've even re-recorded a couple of episodes just because I haven't been happy with them. And they're all going to launch for 10 weeks starting in March. And they're just going to go every week. And there's so much to it. Like, did you know the power of a joke is so powerful that in World War II, Great Britain actually created a comedy show that would mock Hitler and would get into German airwaves, like get into their radios. Their whole idea, they funded it. The government funded it because they thought if Germany can make fun, if they can laugh at Hitler, game over.
Yeah.
That's how powerful a joke is.
So they're taking money and they're building missiles and airplanes and boats and developing special forces and spies in a comic.
Yeah,
an
actual comedy show.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, when I first read that, because I'm a comedy writer, I've written for a lot of late night shows, and I thought, man, I would love that job. Could you imagine if the government called you up and said, we just want you to make a funny show making fun of some dictator?
Yeah, making fun of Adolf Hitler.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah.
And they did a really smart thing, too, because the whole premise of the show was that he was a German soldier who was obsessed with Hitler. But everything he was saying was terrible about Hitler. So the German audience would know, like, wait a second, this isn't a real show. This is a comedy show. And then they started to laugh. And it became a really big part of World War II.
Wow.
Jokes are powerful.
Yeah.
So much so that, like, you look in the Bible, and what was Elijah doing with the prophets? The false prophets. He was making fun of their fake God.
Yeah,
you know,
he was mocking
them.
Yeah.
Maybe he's in the bathroom, right? And the moment you tell a joke, that side that you're telling a joke towards loses power.
You know, I have never thought of Elijah as a stand-up comic until you just shared that.
He was a great comic.
I mean, that's one of my favorite stories, and I mean it this time.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. When he does that, and he's up there, someone has to. If you don't know what we're talking about, go find that. It's the story of Elijah with the false prophets up there. But you're right. He's using humor to make his point.
Yes.
To both the prophets and the audience, the people that were watching.
Yeah, and so that's one of the episodes we talk about is the power of a joke. It's one of the episodes for Forgotten Hollywood. And we talk about Elijah, and we talk about how in China, for instance, did you know Winnie the Pooh is banned? Because Winnie the Pooh supposedly looks like their president, and they said, that's it, nobody can make fun of
I liked how
it.
you said supposedly, so you can stay alive.
Just in case, yeah.
Yes.
Just in case China's listening, I just want to be okay. Because and so literally, it's the power of a joke. They're trying to shut it down because why? He would lose power in the minds of the people.
Yeah.
A joke can power shift. That's why you see the mob right now just trying to get rid of comics. because when a comic tells a joke, there's a power shift.
Yeah. Man,
interesting.
that is so interesting. I can't wait. March. Forgotten Hollywood. Okay,
Forgotten
tell us
Hollywood.
again how to get a hold of you if
So,
someone wants to find you.
So you can get a hold of me, chriswineland.com, or at Chris Wineland Comedy on all
Can you
of my
spell
socials.
Wineland your last name?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
Wineland. You drink
So,
too much wine, you land on the ground.
Okay.
That's our family slogan.
Yeah.
It is.
Wineland.
Yeah.
Okay,
And-
chriswineland.com.
chriswineland.com. And I forgot to tell you this, but Forgotten Hollywood is partnering with the coolest Christian history podcast studio in the whole world. They're called Revive Studios, and they do Christian history podcasts. So if you want to listen to any others, you got to listen to them. I partnered with them because they are literally my favorite Christian history podcast.
I am definitely going to look that up. This is so applicable because, as you know, with No Gray Areas, we're in the process of turning this biggest sports scandal, turning it into a movie. So we're leveraging entertainment.
Yes.
And we're trying to reach 1 million kids with the curriculum. And so, again, it's just the power of entertainment, the power of that world, and leveraging that as
So
you're trying to do.
powerful.
So good. So one of the things we do on our podcast is I ask 2 truths and a lie, which is ironic. Again, no gray areas. I'm telling you to lie to me. So
Right.
So audience has gotten to know you a little bit. I've gotten to know you. Tell us 2 truths and a lie. See if we can guess.
Okay, let's do this. 2 truths and a lie. Here we go. I am a marathon runner. I died before for a really long time. I led a celebrity to the Lord.
Died for a really long time. What does that mean? I think I remember seeing, because I do follow you on social media, and people should follow you. You have some hilarious stuff. It'll bring a smile to your face almost every day. I think I remember you saying sometime that you ran a marathon or that you ran. So that's a truth, isn't it?
That is a truth. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a marathon runner.
Yeah.
I say that very loosely because I'm the worst runner.
Yeah.
But I started in 2020 after I had lost my radio job. I just wanted to kind of like stay exercise and stay healthy because that really kind of like was a downward thing for me. So I just picked something impossible because I'm not a runner. And I've ran 2 half marathons already. I have 2 more coming up in the next 3 months. And I'm doing the San Diego half marathon in June.
That's so cool. Congrats, man. I love hearing that. Okay, so I'm gonna say the dying one is a lie.
See, this is why I'm great at 2 truths and a lie, because it's true. I died.
You're a good liar.
Thanks, I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I usually put that on my resume.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Pray for me.
Great
Pray
liar.
for me.
Great liar. Great liar.
Yeah, no, I was dead for 36 minutes according to the medical report. And it was when I was 19, and I had, it was routine surgery, and it went wrong. They gave me, according to the medical report again, they gave me 5 different types of anesthesia, 4 of which were lethal. And I died, and they just didn't know how to bring me back. They tried everything. And my mom, who we did not have a great relationship with at the time, even though my mom helped me get up on stage and stuff, there was just so much from the past that it was hard for me. And I had gotten saved, but like I still couldn't figure out forgiving one another yet. And my mom just prayed for me in the chapel at the same time because she felt like something was going on. And so out of nowhere, I just came back to life after 36 minutes, which is crazy. Came back to life. And not only did the Lord resurrect me, but he resurrected my relationship with my mom.
Wow.
In that. Yeah, through that. It was
What
really
a
cool.
great story.
Yeah.
See, you're a great storyteller because you take 2 truths and a lie.
And I turned it into some sort of a gospel
and
message?
then it's like, great job, great job, Chris. Thanks so much. Thanks for being on here. Really appreciate it. We have the Great Hackle, the books you talked about, to give away. So we're gonna give those away to the audience. Love about your upcoming podcast. I'm gonna check it out. I encourage the audience to check it out. But thanks for what you're doing. Keep it up, man.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the No Gray Areas podcast. To dive deeper into the story, be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and check out nograyAreas.com.